Part 1. First Contact Protocol. The massive ship hung in space like a dark moon, its hull stretching for kilometers in every direction. Inside the command center, Admiral Kethvar studied the holographic display floating before him. The blue and green planet rotated slowly, completely unaware that 12 different alien civilizations were watching its every move. "Report," Kethvar said, his forearms crossed behind his back. His skin had the gray texture of old stone, and his eyes glowed. With a soft purple light, Commander Yathara stepped forward, her insect-like features clicking as she spoke. "The survey is complete, Admiral. The species calls itself human. They have achieved basic spaceflight but remain trapped within their home system. Current technology level suggests they are approximately 300 standard cycles behind. Minimal galactic standards." Kethvar nodded. This was routine. The Hegemony Council had been expanding across the galaxy for thousands of years, cataloging new species and deciding their fate. Most civilizations they encountered fell into predictable categories. Some were peaceful and ready for integration into galactic society. Others were too primitive and needed time to develop. A few were too dangerous and required immediate action. "What is their threat assessment?" Kethvar asked. Ithara consulted her datapad. Tier 7. Developing aggression-prone species. They show concerning levels of violence toward their own kind. In the past century alone, they have engaged in over 200 armed conflicts. They possess weapons capable of destroying their entire planet several times over. This made Kethvar pause. Most species developed interstellar travel before they developed planet-killing weapons. These humans seem to have done things backward. "Curious, do they pose any immediate threat to hegemony space?" "Negative," Yathara replied quickly. "Their fastest ships would require approximately 50,000 years to reach the nearest hegemony outpost. However, our xenobiologists have expressed concern about their development patterns." Kethvar pulled up the detailed reports. The humans were indeed strange. They had split the atom before they had achieved sustainable fusion. They had developed artificial intelligence while still using chemical rockets. Most puzzling of all, they seemed to thrive on conflict. While other species used war as a last resort, humans appeared to use it as a tool for rapid advancement. "Look at this data," Yathara continued, highlighting sections of the report. "During their most recent global conflict, they advanced their technology by an estimated 200 years in just 6 standard cycles. They went from basic flight to orbital mechanics in less than a single generation." The Admiral frowned. This was unusual, but not unprecedented. Some species developed quickly, under pressure. The concerning part was what happened after the conflict ended. Most civilizations settled into peace and slower development. The humans had immediately begun preparing for the next war. "Sir," another voice called out. Science Officer Peltarin approached, his blue skin shimmering with excitement. "You need to see this. We've intercepted some of their entertainment transmissions." A new holographic display appeared, showing scenes from human movies and television. Kethvar watched in fascination as humans depicted themselves fighting impossible odds against aliens, robots, and monsters. In every story, they won through determination, sacrifice, and creative violence. "They fantasize about galactic conflict," Peltarin explained. "These are not historical records. These are fictional scenarios they create for entertainment. They imagine themselves fighting superior alien forces and winning." Kethvar studied the images more carefully. The humans in these stories never surrendered. Even when facing extinction, they kept fighting. They used tactics that were considered barbaric by galactic standards: suicide attacks, civilian militias, scorched earth retreats. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to enjoy it. "Recommendation?" Kethvar asked. Commander Yathara consulted with her staff before responding. "Standard containment protocol. We establish a perimeter around their system and wait." Most aggressive species burn themselves out within a few centuries when they cannot expand outward. The humans show all the signs of a civilization that will destroy itself if given enough time. The Admiral considered this. Containment was indeed the standard approach for dangerous primitive species. It was considered merciful. Better to let them exhaust themselves naturally than to crush them with overwhelming force. The hegemony had used this method successfully on 17 previous occasions. "How long do the estimates suggest?" Kethvar asked. "Between 200 and 500 standard cycles," Science Officer Peltarin replied. "Their resource consumption rate and population growth suggest they will face critical shortages within that time frame, combined with their tendency toward internal conflict. The probability of self-extinction exceeds 90%. Kethvar nodded slowly. It made sense. The humans were trapped on a single world with limited resources. Their aggressive nature would eventually turn inward as resources became scarce. They would fight over what remained until nothing was left. "Very well," the Admiral decided. "Implement standard containment protocol. Establish monitoring stations at the edge of their system. No direct contact. We observe and wait." The orders went out across the hegemony fleet. Ships took positions around the human solar system, far enough away to avoid detection, but close enough to prevent any escape attempts. The blockade was invisible to human technology, but absolutely effective. Nothing would leave that system without hegemony permission. Kethvar remained in the command center, watching the blue planet rotate on his display. The humans continued their daily lives, completely unaware that their fate had been decided. They would live out their remaining centuries in their cosmic cage, eventually burning themselves out as their resources depleted and their conflicts intensified. "Sir," Ithara said quietly, "the xenobiologists have noted something else about the humans." "What is it?" "They have a saying that appears frequently in their cultural expressions. Caged animals are the most dangerous. The science team finds it curious that a species would recognize this trait in lower life forms, but not in themselves." Kethvar dismissed this with a wave of his hand. "Primitive species often have colorful sayings. It means nothing. They are contained, and they will remain contained until nature takes its course." The Admiral took one last look at the display before leaving the command center. The humans appeared so small from this distance, so insignificant. Their little ships crawled between their planets like insects. Their weapons, impressive by their standards, would barely scratch the hull of a hegemony scout ship. As he walked through the corridors of his massive vessel, Kethvar felt satisfied with the decision. Containment was the right choice. The humans would have their time to develop and explore within their system. If they managed to overcome their violent nature, perhaps in a few hundred years, they might be ready for contact. If not, they would simply fade away like so many other failed civilizations. The Admiral had no way of knowing that his decision had just made the greatest mistake in hegemony history. The humans were indeed caged animals. And caged animals, when they finally break free, are not interested in joining the civilization that caged them. They are interested in destroying it completely. The containment field activated silently around the human solar system. Earth continued to spin, its inhabitants unaware that they had just become prisoners in their own home. But deep in military bunkers and research facilities around the world, the first signs of the alien presence were being detected. The cage was in place. Now the question was how long it would hold. Part 2. The cage rattles. 50 years had passed since the hegemony established their invisible prison around the human solar system. Admiral Kethvar, now promoted to fleet commander, stood in the same command center where he had made the containment decision. His gray skin had darkened with age, and new scars marked his arms from various campaigns across the galaxy. The reports on his desk should have been routine. Most contained species followed predictable patterns. Internal conflicts increased. Resources depleted, population declined. The few that survived usually became peaceful and passive, accepting their limited existence. But the human reports were different. "Commander," Science Officer Peltarin approached, his blue skin now pale with concern. "You need to review the latest observations from the monitoring stations." Kethvar activated the holographic display. Earth appeared before him, but it looked nothing like the world they had first observed. The night side of the planet blazed with light, not just from cities, but from massive industrial complexes that stretched across entire continents. Space around the planet teemed with activity. Hundreds of space stations orbited Earth, and construction ships worked constantly on new projects. "How many humans are there now?" Kethvar asked. 12 billion, Peltarin replied quietly. "Their population has doubled since containment began. This was impossible. Contained species were supposed to face resource shortages and population decline. How are they feeding 12 billion individuals on a single planet? They have developed technologies we did not anticipate," Peltarin explained, pulling up detailed scans. "Vertical farming complexes that reach into the clouds, fusion reactors that provide unlimited energy. They have turned their ocean floors into mining operations and their polar regions into massive industrial centers." Kethvar studied the images in growing amazement. The humans had not just survived containment, they had thrived. But more concerning was what they were building. The space stations were not research facilities or habitats. They were shipyards. "Show me their fleet," Kethvar ordered. New images appeared, and the fleet commander felt his blood chill. Human ships filled the solar system, not the primitive chemical rockets they had observed 50 years ago, but sleek vessels that burned with the light of controlled fusion. The largest ships stretched for kilometers, their hulls bristling with weapons that even hegemony sensors could not fully analyze. "How many ships?" Kethvar asked. "Over 10,000 combat vessels," Peltarin replied. "And the number increases daily. They have established shipyards around every planet and major asteroid in their system. Our estimates suggest they are producing 50 new ships every standard cycle." The fleet commander activated his private communication channel to the Hegemony Council. Within moments, the faces of 11 alien leaders appeared on his screen. Some looked curious, others annoyed at being disturbed. "Report, Fleet Commander." Council Leader Vethron spoke. Her species resembled large spiders, and her 8 eyes focused on him with predatory intensity. "The human containment has produced unexpected results," Kethvar began carefully. "They have not followed normal patterns of decline." "Elaborate," demanded Councillor Jektar, his reptilian features showing impatience. Kethvar shared the observation data. Silence filled the communication channel as the council members absorbed what they were seeing. The humans had not only survived 50 years of containment, they had used that time to transform their entire civilization. "This is concerning," Council Leader Vethron finally said. "But they remain contained. Their ships cannot penetrate our blockade." As if summoned by her words, an alarm began sounding throughout Kethvar's ship. Emergency lights flashed, and crew members rushed to their stations. "Fleet Commander," Communications Officer Zarthek called out urgently. "Contact at Monitoring Station 7. They report unknown vessel approaching at impossible speed." Kethvar switched to the tactical display. A single human ship was racing toward the edge of their solar system. But this ship was different from anything they had observed. It moved without visible engines, its hull glowing with strange energy. "Patterns! Speed?" Kethvar asked. "0.7 light speed and accelerating," Zarthek replied, his voice filled with disbelief. The council members watched in shocked silence as the human ship approached the containment perimeter. Monitoring Station 7 powered up its weapons, preparing to destroy the vessel before it could reach the barrier. "Warning shot first," Council Leader Vethron ordered. "Standard protocol." The monitoring station fired a plasma bolt across the human ship's path. The vessel did not slow down or change course. If anything, it accelerated. "Destroy it!" Vethran commanded. The monitoring station's main weapons activated, sending a barrage of energy blasts toward the human ship. The bolts struck the vessel's hull and simply vanished, absorbed by some kind of defensive field that made the ship glow brighter. Impossible, Counselor Jektar whispered. Nothing can absorb that much energy. The human ship reached the containment barrier. For a moment, it seemed to pause, as if testing the invisible wall that had imprisoned humanity for 50 years. Then something happened that made every hegemony officer watching question their understanding of physics. The ship did not break through the barrier or find a weakness in it. Instead, the vessel simply ceased to exist in normal space. One moment it was there, the next, it was gone. 3 seconds later, it reappeared on the other side of the containment field. "Fleet Commander," Zarthek called out, his voice barely controlled panic. "The human ship has fired weapons at Monitoring Station 7. On the tactical display, twin beams of pure energy struck the monitoring station. The massive hegemony facility, designed to withstand direct hits from capital ship. Weapons disintegrated instantly. Metal, electronics, and crew simply stopped existing where the beams touched them. By the void, Council Leader Vethran breathed. What kind of weapons are those? Before anyone could answer, the human ship vanished again. This time it reappeared near Monitoring Station 12 on the opposite side of the solar system. Another pair of energy beams lanced out and another station died. How is it moving like that? Counselor Jektar demanded. Science Officer Pelterin was working frantically at his station, trying to analyze the sensor data. Sir, I think they are manipulating space itself. The ship is not moving through space, it is folding space around it. That is impossible, Vethran stated flatly. Space folding technology requires computational power that exceeds anything a primitive species could develop. As if to prove her wrong, the human ship appeared directly in front of Kethvar's flagship. This close, they could see details of its construction. The hull was smooth and black, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Energy crackled along its surface like captured lightning. Incoming transmission, Zarthek announced. Put it through, Kethvar ordered. The display flickered, and a human face appeared. It was a woman with short gray hair and cold blue eyes. She wore what appeared to be a military uniform, but unlike anything in hegemony records. My name is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said. Her voice was calm, but there was something in her tone that made experienced warriors nervous. You have held my species prisoner for 50 years. This ends now. You are in violation of hegemony space, Council Leader Vethran responded. Return to your system immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We tried to return to our system. Your monitoring station tried to stop us. That was a mistake. You destroyed hegemony property, Counselor Jektar snarled. You will pay for this act of aggression. The human admiral's smile grew wider. Aggression? You imprisoned an entire species without trial or warning. You condemned 4 generations of humans to live and die in a cage. And now you complain about aggression? She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to burn with inner fire. We spent 50 years wondering why we were alone in the universe. We spent 50 years developing technologies to break free from whatever was holding us back. We spent 50 years preparing for this moment. What do you want? Fleet Commander Kethvar asked quietly. Justice, Admiral Chen replied simply. And freedom. We will have both. The transmission ended, and the human ship vanished once again. This time it did not reappear anywhere that hegemony sensors could detect. Council Leader Vethran was the first to speak. One ship. This changes nothing. Increase security around the remaining monitoring stations and prepare a battle fleet. These humans will learn the price of defying the hegemony. But Fleet Commander Kethvar was studying the tactical displays with growing unease. The human ship had destroyed 2 heavily defended stations without taking any damage. It had demonstrated technology that should have been impossible for a contained species to develop. Most concerning of all, Admiral Chen had spoken of 50 years of preparation. If one ship could do this much damage, what could an entire fleet accomplish? As alarms continued to sound throughout the hegemony fleet, HFY realized they might have made a terrible miscalculation. They had caged humanity, expecting them to destroy themselves. Instead, they had given them time to become something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Part 3. The Doctrine of Mutually Assured Destruction. 6 months after Admiral Chen's ship had broken through the containment field, the galaxy was learning that humanity had very different ideas about warfare than the rest of galactic civilization. Fleet. Commander HFY stood in the emergency command center deep within Hegemony Prime, the capital world of their empire. Above him, the planet's orbital defenses engaged human ships in what military analysts were already calling the most vicious battle in recorded galactic history. Status report, HFY demanded, though he already knew it would be grim. Outer. Defense grid is down, reported Captain Yelmora, his tentacled face pale with stress. The humans are not targeting our weapons or shields. They are targeting the infrastructure that powers them. This was typical of human tactics. They had studied hegemony technology for 50 years and identified every weakness. While traditional galactic warfare involved ships shooting at other ships until one side surrendered, humans attacked everything that kept a civilization functioning. What about the defense platforms? HFY asked. Destroyed in the first wave, Yelmora replied, quietly. The humans launched kinetic projectiles from outside our weapons range. No energy shields, no matter how powerful, can stop a chunk of metal moving at 90% of light speed. HFY closed his 4 eyes in frustration. Kinetic weapons were considered primitive by galactic standards. They were slow, inaccurate, and easy to avoid. But the humans had found ways to make them fast, precise, and utterly unstoppable. Their relativistic kill vehicles hit with the force of nuclear weapons, and there was no defense against them except to not be where they were aimed. Sir, Communications Officer Zarthek interrupted. Incoming transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the display. She looked older than she had 6 months ago, with new lines around her eyes and fresh scars on her face. Behind her, HFY could see the bridge of her ship, a place of controlled chaos where humans worked with mechanical precision. Fleet Commander HFY, Admiral Chen said formally, I am offering you one final chance to surrender. The hegemony does not surrender to primitive species, HFY replied, though the words felt hollow. Admiral Chen nodded as if she had expected this response. Then you should know what is coming next. We have studied your civilization extensively. We know where your industrial centers are located. We know where your food production facilities operate. We know where your population centers are most vulnerable. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. In 37 minutes, every major hegemony world will come under simultaneous attack. We will not target your military forces. We will target your ability to sustain life. You are bluffing, HFY stated, though he was no longer certain. Admiral? Another voice called out from behind Chen. A younger human approached, carrying a data pad. Confirmation from all strike groups. Operation Clean Slate is ready to execute. Admiral Chen looked directly at HFY. Fleet Commander, in the past 6 months we have lost over 2 million human lives to your forces. Our shipyards on Mars are gone. Our colonies on Europa and Ganymede have been evacuated. You have made it clear that the only choice you offer us is extinction. She stood up, and HFY could see that she was wearing full combat armor. So we choose extinction, but not ours. Yours. You cannot possibly have forces positioned to attack all hegemony worlds simultaneously, Kethvar protested. Admiral Chen smiled that cold smile he had learned to fear. You still do not understand what you are facing. We are not trying to conquer your empire. We are not interested in ruling your people. We want to ensure that no species ever again has the power to cage another. She gestured to someone off-screen, and new images appeared on the display. Kethvar felt his blood freeze as he recognized what he was seeing. Human ships hung in space near dozens of hegemony worlds, but these were not the warships they had been fighting. These vessels were enormous, their hulls split open to reveal massive cargo bays. Those are colony ships, Kethvar whispered. Construction ships, Admiral Chen corrected. Each one carries 1,000,000 tons of self-replicating machinery. Gray goo, your scientists call it. Nanoscale machines programmed to convert any matter they encounter into more of themselves. The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. Gray goo was considered the ultimate forbidden weapon. Every galactic civilization had strict laws against its development because once released, it could not be controlled. It would consume everything, buildings, ships, planets, stars, until nothing remained but an expanding cloud of identical machines. You would not dare, Kethvar breathed. That would destroy everything, your own people included. Our people are already dying, Admiral Chen replied calmly. The difference is that when we die, we will take our enemies with us. When your people die, they die alone and forgotten. She looked at something off-screen, then back at Kethvar. 36 minutes, Fleet Commander. You can save billions of lives by ordering all hegemony forces to stand down immediately. And if I refuse? Admiral Chen's expression did not change. Then in 36 minutes, the hegemony ceases to exist. Every world you control will become a dead rock floating in space. Every ship you have built will become scrap metal. Every trace of your civilization will be erased from the universe. You are insane, Kethvar said quietly. No, Admiral Chen replied. We are human. There is a difference, though I understand why you might confuse the two. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his staff looked to him for orders, but what orders could he give? Surrender meant the end of hegemony dominance. Continuing the fight meant the end of everything. Sir, Captain Yelmora spoke carefully, perhaps we should consider their offer. Surrender to a primitive species? Kethvar snarled. Never. But even as he said it, he was thinking about the gray goo ships positioned near every major hegemony world. The humans had somehow moved massive fleets across the galaxy without being detected. They had demonstrated weapons that violated every principle of civilized warfare, and they had made it clear they would rather destroy everything than accept defeat. Open a channel to all hegemony forces, Kethvar ordered. Sir? Yelmora asked uncertainly. Do it. The communication system activated, connecting Kethvar to every hegemony ship and station in the galaxy. Thousands of faces appeared on subsidiary. Screens, captains, admirals, station commanders, all looking to him for leadership. All forces, Kethvar began slowly. The humans have positioned gray goo weapons near our major worlds. They are prepared to activate these weapons in... He glanced at the chronometer. 34 minutes. Shocked silence filled the channel. Gray goo was a nightmare scenario that every military officer had studied but hoped never to face. Fleet. Commander, Admiral Tekran of the 5th Battle Group spoke up. Surely they are bluffing. No species would risk such weapons. Would you risk such weapons to save your homeworld? Kethvar asked quietly. Tekran hesitated. If there was no other choice, yes. The humans believe they have no other choice, Kethvar said. We gave them that belief when we caged them for 50 years. He looked around the command center, seeing the faces of his staff. These were good officers who had served the hegemony faithfully for decades. They deserved to live. Their families deserved to live. All hegemony forces, Kethvar said formally, stand down immediately. Do not engage human vessels. Do not approach human positions. Wait for further orders. Sir, Tekran protested, we outnumber them 1,000 to 1. Numbers mean nothing against an enemy willing to destroy the universe rather than lose, Kethvar replied. Stand down. That is an order. One by one, the hegemony commanders acknowledged the order. Ships powered, down their weapons. Stations went into defensive mode. The greatest military force in galactic history simply stopped fighting. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then Admiral Chen's face appeared on the communication screen again. Fleet Commander, she said formally, your forces have stood down. The gray goo weapons will not be activated at this time. What happens now? Kethvar asked. Admiral Chen considered the question carefully. Now we discuss the terms of hegemony surrender. And Fleet Commander? There will be terms. The age of galactic empires ends today. As the transmission ended, Kethvar realized that everything had changed. The humans had not just won a military victory. They had demonstrated that they possessed weapons capable of destroying entire civilizations and the will to use them. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the depths of space, human construction ships began building even more terrible weapons, preparing for any species that might one day threaten humanity's freedom. The cage was broken. Now the question was whether the galaxy could survive the creatures that had been freed. Part 4. The Mathematics of Extinction. The surrender had lasted exactly 73 days. Fleet Commander Kethvar stood in the ruins of what had once been the Hegemony Council chambers on Prime Station. Twisted metal and shattered crystal surrounded him, the remains of a civilization that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Through the massive breach in the station's hull, he could see human ships moving in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with weapons that had redefined the meaning of warfare. The rebellion had started on Zephyria Prime, Admiral Kethvar's home world. The military leaders there had convinced themselves that humanity's gray goo threat was a bluff. They had believed that no species would actually risk universal destruction. They had been wrong. Sir, Captain Yelmora approached carefully, his tentacled face showing the exhaustion they all felt. The final casualty reports from Zephyria. Kethvar did not want to hear them, but leadership demanded he face the consequences of his people's choices. Report. Total planetary sterilization, Yelmora said quietly. Population of 47 billion. No survivors detected. 47 billion. An entire species wiped from existence in 6 hours. The humans had not just used gray goo weapons, they had deployed something far worse. Quantum cascade bombs that unraveled matter at the subatomic level, leaving behind empty space where a world had once existed. What about the other rebel worlds? Kethvar asked, though he already knew. Veltar Prime, destroyed. Crystalline homeworld Scythara, destroyed. The orbital cities of the Keth Mori Federation, destroyed. Yelmora's voice broke slightly. 16 worlds in total, over 200 billion dead. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. Every time a hegemony world had tried to resist human rule, the humans had deleted it from existence. Not conquered, not occupied, completely erased as if it had never existed. Fleet Commander, Communications Officer Zarthek called out from his damaged station. Incoming transmission from Admiral Chen. Kethvar straightened his uniform, though it was torn and stained with the blood of his fallen comrades. Even in defeat, he would maintain dignity. Put her through. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the flickering holographic display. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, and Kethvar could see Earth through the viewports behind her. The blue world looked peaceful from this distance, giving no hint of the weapons factories and shipyards that had produced the most effective killing machines in galactic history. "Fleet Commander," Admiral Chen said formally, "I understand you have received the casualty reports from the rebel actions." 200 billion souls, Kethvar replied. "Was this necessary?" Admiral Chen's expression did not change. "Your people made a choice. They chose to believe that humans would show mercy to those who had caged us for 50 years. They were mistaken." She stepped closer to the camera, and Kethvar could see the weariness in her eyes. This war had cost her people as well, though not as heavily. "Fleet Commander, I want you to understand something. We did not start this conflict. We did not choose to be imprisoned. We did not decide to fight against impossible odds. But once you forced us into this situation, we chose to win." "At any cost," Kethvar said bitterly. "At any cost," Admiral Chen agreed. "Your military doctrine spoke of acceptable losses, calculated risks, proportional responses. Our doctrine is simpler. If you threaten our freedom, we will end your existence. Completely, permanently, without exception." A new voice interrupted the conversation. "Admiral," a young human officer called out from behind Chen, "long-range sensors are detecting movement in the Outer Rim territories. It appears the remaining hegemony forces are massing for a final assault." Admiral Chen turned to look at her officer, then back at Kethvar. "Is this true, Fleet Commander?" Kethvar felt a moment of bitter satisfaction. "The hegemony consists of 12 member species. You have eliminated 4 of them completely. The remaining 8 have decided that extinction in battle is preferable to slavery under human rule." "I see," Admiral Chen said quietly. "And how many ships are they bringing?" "Every vessel that still functions," Kethvar replied. "Approximately 50,000 warships of all classes. They are converging on the Sol system as we speak. This should have caused panic among the humans. 50,000 ships represented the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history." But Admiral Chen simply nodded as if she had been expecting this news. "Excellent," she said calmly. "That will save us the trouble of hunting them down individually." The casual dismissal of such overwhelming force made Kethvar's blood run cold. "Admiral, do you understand what 50,000 ships means? Even with your advanced weapons, you cannot possibly defeat such numbers." Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time in months, it seemed genuine rather than predatory. "Fleet Commander, let me explain something about human military thinking. We do not plan to defeat 50,000 ships. We plan to make sure that attacking us costs far more than any victory could possibly be worth." She gestured to someone off-screen, and new images appeared on the display. Kethvar found himself looking at Sol system, but it was transformed beyond recognition. Massive orbital platforms surrounded every planet and moon. Asteroid belts had been converted into defensive networks. Most disturbing of all, the space. Between planets crawled with movement. Millions of objects too small to be ships, but too numerous to count. "What are those?" Kethvar asked. "Autonomous weapons platforms," Admiral Chen explained. "Each one is about the size of a fighter craft. Each one carries a single fusion warhead and enough intelligence to select its own target. We have approximately 50 million of them positioned throughout the system. 50 million suicide drones." The numbers were staggering, but Admiral Chen was not finished. "Beyond the drone swarms, we have positioned gravity mines throughout the system. Any ship that drops out of faster-than-light travel will find itself caught in artificial gravity wells that will tear it apart. We have quantum entanglement communicators that will coordinate our entire defense network in real time. And we have prepared the ultimate fallback option." "Which is?" Kethvar asked. Though he was afraid of the answer, Admiral Chen looked directly at him, and her expression was absolutely serious. "If it becomes clear that we cannot win, we will detonate our star." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Detonating a star would destroy everything within several light years. It would eliminate not just the attacking fleet, but Sul system itself, along with the 12 billion humans who lived there. You would kill your own people to deny us victory, Kethvar whispered. We would ensure that the species that caged us learns the ultimate lesson about the cost of threatening human freedom, Admiral Chen replied. When our star explodes, the radiation will sterilize every hegemony world within 50 light years. The shockwave will destroy your remaining fleets wherever they are hiding. And the quantum resonance will send a signal across the galaxy that will be detected by every species capable of interstellar travel. She leaned forward, and her voice became deadly quiet. That signal will tell them exactly what happened here. It will tell them that the hegemony tried to cage humanity and was destroyed so completely that we chose mutual annihilation rather than accept their rule. Every species in the galaxy will know that attacking humans means the total destruction of everyone involved. Kethvar felt the last of his hope die. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon designed to inflict maximum damage even in defeat. Any force attacking them would win a hollow victory over a graveyard. Fleet Commander, Admiral Chen continued, I am sending you the technical specifications for our defensive systems. Share them with the incoming fleet. Let them see exactly what they are flying into. Let them calculate the cost of their assault. Why are you telling me this? Kethvar asked. Because I want them to make an informed choice, Admiral Chen replied. If they attack us, billions will die on both sides. If they turn around and go home, they can live. We do not want to destroy them. We simply want to be left alone. And if they choose to attack anyway? Admiral Chen's expression became stone cold. Then they will learn why humanity survived 50 years in a cage while every other species in that situation accepted their fate. They will learn that some species would rather burn down the universe than accept chains. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar alone with the weight of impossible decisions. In the distance, he could see the lights of the approaching hegemony fleet, 50,000 ships carrying the last hope of galactic civilization. But as he studied the technical specifications Admiral Chen had sent, Kethvar realized that hope was an illusion. The humans had spent 50 years preparing for this exact scenario. They had turned their home system into a killing field designed to make victory impossible. The cage had created monsters, and now those monsters were about to show the galaxy exactly what 50 years of rage could accomplish when backed by human ingenuity and the absolute refusal to surrender. The final battle was coming, but Kethvar was beginning to understand that it would not be a battle at all. It would be a demonstration of why caging humans was the greatest mistake any civilization could make. Part 5. The New Silence. 3 years had passed since the Battle of Sol, though calling it a battle was generous. It had lasted exactly 14 minutes. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to the Admiral, walked through the ruins of the Great Library on Hegemony Prime. Her archaeological team moved carefully through the debris, scanning for intact data crystals and recording devices. The massive structure had once housed the collective knowledge of 12 different civilizations spanning 10,000 years of galactic history. Now it was a tomb. Dr. Chen, her assistant Marcus called out from across the rubble-strewn hall. I think you need to see this. Sarah picked her way through the scattered remains of alien art and literature until she reached Marcus's position. He was crouched beside a partially intact display case, his scanner showing unusual energy readings. What have you found? Sarah asked. It's a recording device, Marcus replied, carefully extracting a crystalline object about the size of his fist. The quantum matrix is still stable. There might be data we can recover. Sarah nodded and activated her own scanner. The crystal pulsed with faint energy, suggesting that whatever information it contained had survived the destruction of the library. Can you access it here? I think so. Marcus connected a portable interface to the crystal and began the delicate process of data extraction. The file structure is similar to other hegemony records we've found. It looks like personal logs? Maybe from a fleet commander? The device flickered to life, projecting a holographic image into the dusty air. A familiar gray-skinned figure appeared, his four arms crossed behind his back. Sarah recognized him from historical files. Fleet Commander Kethvar, the Zephyrian who had implemented the containment protocol around Earth 50 years ago. Personal log, supplemental. Kethvar's image spoke. The human fleet has arrived. At Sol System. Admiral Velthara commands 50,000 ships, the largest force ever assembled in galactic history. She believes this will be sufficient to overcome human defenses. The recording paused as Kethvar looked directly at the camera. His purple eyes showed exhaustion and something that might have been regret. I have reviewed the technical specifications. Admiral Chen provided, I have calculated the probable outcomes. I have shared this information with Admiral Velthara and the other fleet commanders. They choose to proceed with the assault anyway. Sarah felt a chill as she listened to the dead alien's words. She had heard the stories of the final battle, but most historical records focused on the human perspective. This was different, the voice of someone who had been there, who had understood what was about to happen. The mathematics are simple, Kethvar continued. The humans have positioned 50 million autonomous weapons platforms throughout their system. Each platform carries a fusion warhead capable of destroying a heavy cruiser. Even if our ships destroy 90% of these platforms, the remaining 5 million will inflict catastrophic losses on our fleet. The recording flickered as damage to the crystal caused temporary distortions. When it stabilized, Kethvar was standing in what appeared to be a military briefing room. Other alien figures were visible in the background, their faces showing the strain of impossible decisions. Admiral Velthara refuses to consider the quantum entanglement mines, Kethvar said. She believes our superior technology will allow us to avoid them. She does not understand that the humans have had 50 years to study our technology and develop countermeasures. Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus. The quantum entanglement mines had been one of humanity's most effective weapons during the war. Ships trying to use faster-than-light travel found themselves trapped in artificial space-time distortions that tore them apart at the molecular level. Most disturbing of all, Kethvar continued, Admiral Velthara dismisses the human threat to detonate their star. She believes this is a bluff, that no species would choose mutual destruction over surrender. She has clearly never studied human history. The image of Kethvar sat down heavily, his gray skin looking almost pale in the recording light. I have tried to explain to her what we are facing. The humans do not fight wars to win territory or resources. They fight wars to ensure their enemies can never threaten them again. They prefer complete destruction of their opponents over any form of coexistence that leaves them vulnerable. Sarah paused the recording and looked around the ruined library. Scattered throughout the debris were fragments of art, literature, and scientific achievements from species that no longer existed. The humans had been thorough in their response to the hegemony threat. Play the rest, she told Marcus. The recording resumed with Kethvar looking directly at the camera. If anyone finds this record, know that what happened here was not inevitable. The hegemony made a choice 50 years ago to cage a species that valued freedom above all else. We assumed they would destroy themselves rather than challenge our authority. We were wrong. He stood up and walked to what appeared to be a viewport. Through it, Sarah could see the lights of a massive fleet preparing for departure. Admiral Velthara launches her assault in 6 hours, Kethvar said quietly. I will not be joining her. I have sent word to all Zephyrian vessels to withdraw from the fleet and return to our homeworld. We will not participate in this final act of stupidity. The recording glitched again, and when it stabilized, Kethvar looked years older. His skin had darkened to almost black, and new scars marked his arms. The assault has begun, he said simply. Initial reports suggest the human defenses are even more effective than predicted. Admiral Velthera's flagship was destroyed in the first wave of autonomous weapons. The second wave of attackers is being systematically eliminated by gravity mines. The third wave has not yet reached weapons range. A long pause followed. When Kethvar spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Total. Fleet casualties exceed 70%. The humans have not yet activated their primary weapon systems. They are destroying the largest military force in galactic history using only automated defenses. The recording jumped forward in time. Kethvar now stood in what appeared to be a command bunker. Alien faces around him showed pure terror. The humans have activated something they call a stellar compression weapon, Kethvar reported. They are not detonating their star. They are using it as ammunition. Sarah felt her breath catch. She had heard rumors of such weapons, but assumed they were propaganda. The human star is ejecting massive plasma bolts, Kethvar continued. Each bolt contains the energy of a supernova, compressed into a projectile the size of a small moon. They are firing their star at our remaining ships. The recording showed brief images of the space battle, captured by long-range sensors. Sarah watched in horrified fascination as bolts of stellar fire crossed the solar system, each one vaporizing dozens of hegemony ships instantly. Total fleet casualties now exceed 95%, Kethvar reported. Admiral Velthara is dead. Admiral Kaitorn is dead. Admiral Sevmalik is dead. The entire command structure has been eliminated. Another time jump. Kethvar now looked ancient, his purple eyes dim with defeat. The battle is over, he said quietly. Of 50,000 ships, fewer than 200 escaped the Sol system. The human weapons demonstrated capabilities that violate our understanding of physics. They did not just defeat our fleet. They erased it from existence. He looked directly at the camera one final time. To any species that might discover this record in the future, understand this. Humanity survived 50 years in a cage not because they were patient, but because they were planning. Every day of containment made them stronger, more determined, more capable of violence on a scale that defies comprehension. Kethvar's image began to fade as the crystal's power finally died. His final words were barely audible. They gave us a choice. Leave them alone or face extinction. We chose extinction. I pray that no other species is foolish enough to make the same mistake. The recording ended, leaving Sarah and Marcus standing in the silence of the ruined library. Around them, the remains of galactic civilization gathered dust in the abandoned halls. Dr. Chen, Marcus said quietly, what do we do with this information? Sarah considered the question carefully. The recording contained strategic information about human weapon systems that were still classified. It also provided insight into the alien perspective on humanity's rise to galactic dominance. We archive it, she decided. This recording goes into the restricted files with the other accounts of the Pacification War. Future generations can decide whether the galaxy needs to remember what happened when someone tried to cage humanity. As they packed up their equipment and prepared to leave the ruined library, Sarah reflected on the strange twist of history that had brought them here. 50 years ago, humans had been prisoners in their own solar system. Now they patrolled the galaxy in ships that carried weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. The cage had been broken. The question that remained was whether humanity would prove to be better custodians of galactic civilization than their predecessors. Outside the library, human ships moved through the silent space lanes between dead worlds. In the distance, construction. Vessels worked on massive projects, new shipyards, new research stations, new weapons that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible.